Okay, I gotta go lay down. But I want to tie off some of these loose ends here. As one premise, I just wanted to say, I want to explain how did the the Democratic Party, the party of slavery, or I should say the Democratic faction of the monolith, how did that become liberal? If they're the party of slavery, and way down south in Dixie and all that, how did they become liberal? Well, originally, liberalism, as we know it today anyway, started in the Republican Party. After all, it was the Republican Party that did the 14th Amendment. And most of the people that were on that committee that wrote the 14th Amendment were from New York State. New York State used to be the big state. Um, what happened was there was always a certain prejudice against Irish Roman Catholics. Suffice it to be said that if you were an Irish Roman Catholic person and you wanted to be in politics, there was little hope that you would ever be able to get anywhere in the Republican Party. So eventually they went to the Democratic Party, and you had these notable persons like Al Smith and Joe Kennedy. And then, of course, in the more modern times, the thing with Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan. So a lot of people that are uh, Irish Roman Catholics, some of them could remember that process. Most of them are probably dead by now. But when they were still alive, they could remember what it was like, the prejudice of being Irish Roman Catholic in the United States. Like Tip O'Neill, I heard him say in a couple interviews and speeches, he would say, "Don't forget the shiny Irish." And Irish people are still there's still prejudice against you if you're Irish, if you're especially Roman Catholic Irish. So this is an important part of this formula because the first true liberal that was elected after Franklin Roosevelt was John Kennedy. And he was also the first Irish Roman Catholic person that was elected. And he was also assassinated, so he didn't get a chance to be president for too long. And this kind of goes back to what I started talking about at the beginning of this series. But before I get carried away with this, I just wanted to lay it down as a premise there because I also want to discuss third party politics. But I want to get on this 11th Amendment thing because it always gets pushed to the side. I just find it extremely peculiar that all of these people that are either involved in Occupy Wall Street, spokesmen for Occupy Wall Street, or these other things like this RTV, Tom Hartman, and Bernie Sanders, and all of these guys that try to latch on, stick their talons into this Occupy Wall Street thing for their own purposes, like this Kaiser Report guy. They're all into this financial thing with this idea that the big banksters are the problem, that the banksters did all these evil, cruel things, and the biggest evil, cruel thing was they defaulted on their debt. Some people, some Republicans, say, well, the government should have just let them fail and let the free market take care of things. And then people that people's pensions and things like, well, too bad they don't get any insurance plans and say, forget about it, because the free market's more important. Well, the reason that the 11th Amendment was passed in the first place was so that states couldn't be sued for doing exactly the same thing that these people are criticizing the banks from doing. What in the hell is the difference? You have these Bernie Sanders, Tom Hartman guys bitching and complaining about corporations. A state is a corporation. The only reason it's not considered a corporation is because of the 11th Amendment. Think about that for a while. So why in the hell do you want to protect states? I mean, Tom Hartman, what are you? Are you like a closet Ron Paul supporter? This Ron Paul guy is like, I'm a libertarian, but I'm against abortion and I'm all for states' rights. So is that what this is about? Because it doesn't make any sense to me. It really doesn't. It's like, if you really believe in this stuff with the banks, be consistent. And you want to do something with the Constitution, abolish the 11th Amendment. The states fuck up and they start doing all of these things that people are bitching and complaining about, like the state. I'm a woman, and the state is fucking around with my reproductive rights, or whatever you want to call it, or just rights as a woman, the rights to be recognized as a human being. I'm going to sue the state. I can't do that now. Even though I'm injured, in fact, I can't do it because of the 11th Amendment. Get rid of the 11th Amendment. It's a bigger problem than this corporate personhood thing is. Get rid of the 11th Amendment. Seriously. As far as third parties go, if you do a third party, if you start a third party, it should be a federal party. It should not be a state and local party. If you want to deal with corrupt politics at the state and local level, you don't have to be a member of any party. You could go in there and be an independent, but the exact same problems that you run into with the federal government, which is essentially something that conservatives had. I don't know, they don't talk about it too much anymore, but some of them do. There was a time when if you were deprived of constitutional rights protected under the U.S. Constitution, and you went through the state system, you had a right to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. There was a right to appeal. Now, this right to appeal went down through the different levels, so that now you hardly have any right to appeal anymore. The last time I tried to appeal in the Second Circuit, they have a thing now. They just say no basis in law and facts. They take your money, the $425 filing fee, and then they don't do anything. They say no basis in law or facts, case dismissed. They take your money and you don't get appeal. So the right to appeal is really, it's illusory at best. The state, New York State even has rules that make it more difficult, and probably the other states do too. So some of these things that used to exist, that the founding fathers and the way it used to be and the way we were, they just not there anymore. It's not the same. But the local governments are also using the same bullshit that they tell you in Congress. The courts will tell you, we just can't handle this anymore. I'm sorry, your constitutional rights were violated, but we just don't have enough people. There's only 9 of us. Well, maybe the 9 guy ought to be replaced by a fucking computer. The conservatives are always bitching and complaining, well, yeah, these guys are too liberal. We want to make sure that they just, the law as it's written, the black letter of the law, get a fucking computer to do it. I mean, I'm not in favor of that, but I don't know why they're not. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? But the state and local government are going to tell you, we're the same thing. We're overwhelmed. We have too many people coming in or complaining about things. We can't listen to you. Or you go to a town meeting, if you get through to magnetometers, if you still have your sanity after that, and the armed police forces and the batons and all of that bullshit, it's like, okay, you have 5 minutes to speak, if you get that much. That's how much the Second Circuit gives you, if a pro se litigant, if they allow you to have an appeal anymore. They give you 5 minutes. State and local governments, maybe they'll give you 2 minutes if you're lucky. But you're still going to stand in line. If there's we're overwhelmed. I'm sorry, we acknowledge your right to be heard, but you can't be heard because we're just overwhelmed by people. So you might as well forget that. And this is the reason I brought up this thing with Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. It's like, there were Irish people. Ted Kennedy was Irish. Okay, so, it's like Ted Kennedy people are looking at this thing with Reagan, and it's like, do we have to like Reagan because he's Irish? No, no, you don't have to. There's Tip O'Neill. Yeah, but geez, every time I see Reagan at Tip O'Neill's with him, they're out singing "When Irish Eyes" or something, or they're playing golf or something, and they got all of these weird colored clothes on. Like, what the hell is going on with that? Well, Tip O'Neill, of course, was the guy that's attributed with this all government is local, or all politics are local. I guess that's what it was. Which is a real crock of shit because it's all it's saying is before the Democrats allow you to be in their party, you got to go up through the seniority. You start at the local level, and then I'm not going to want him in the Congress if he didn't serve in our assembly. That's all that bullshit is. So if you do have a third party, it should be at the federal level because really that's where these problems are, is at the federal level. And all it really amounts to, it's a matter of deciding what things ought to be rights that are realized, shared, and enforceable amongst all the people as human beings. Because that's really the role of the federal government. Things that appertain to everyone. As opposed to things that apply to the local government. For instance, when I was in court, and all of the people that were against me, all of the people unanimously were all Gestapo. Okay, I had this one case that was that regards a single family residential district. Okay, these lots here in the neighborhood I live in are 40-foot wide lots. And single family residential districts are the most highly regulated districts, and they are partitioned away from manufacturing and business and things like that. Of course, the Republicans want to get business everywhere, so they want to, encroach upon the. Well, anyway, what was used against me were zoning cases that appertain to agricultural districts, where you have like one of the cases was a 2.2 acre property. Another case was property that involved 110 acres and off-road vehicles. So this whole idea about localities and the localities knows what's best, it's a crock of shit. Because when you get into the localities, and believe me, I went through this and I could tell you firsthand, and I got stories that'll last forever. I went through this business for 15 years, and I know what I'm talking about, and I'm telling you it's a crock of shit. So, whatever you decide to do, don't be misled by all of this. Tip O'Neill was a great guy and all this. Tell you something else about Tip O'Neill. I saw this. I saw him say this. Somebody was saying, well, all of this buddy shit with Reagan. Reagan was a black person. You take us for granted. We vote for you guys all the time, and you're hanging out with this Reagan guy. I mean, his record on civil rights isn't so great. And one of the things Tip O'Neill said to that was, well, you people are going to have to do what we did. In other words, what Irish people did. You're going to have to get involved in Wall Street. You're going to have to get involved in investments and in business. And you're going to have to work your way up through the system like we did. And then at the end of that, don't forget the shiny Irish. So none of these guys are clean and pure and pristine. And all of this shit should really just be forgotten. I mean, you have to realize where these people are coming from, and that they're still tinctured by this. But in order to evolve, those things have to evolve into something else. You have to abandon these things that are obsolete and get into things that are new. And the things that I'm proposing are new things. They would change the landscape. They would change how these different forces interact, how the state and local governments interact with the federal government. Those are the things that you have to do, because those are the ways in which the monolith controls and regulates your life. Those are the ways that the monolith dictates your life. All of these things with the middle class. Are there any artists? Are there any artists in Congress? All the people in Congress, all of the people, they're all status quo people. There's no artists in Congress. I guess like Al Franken is maybe like the closest thing, but he was like in a show business and all this. I went past my 15 minutes.